And good afternoon to you. Right now, we are going to hear from Galveston County Office of Emergency Management, and they have started to talk about how they are going to go ahead and prepare and how they are preparing for the effects of Hurricane Beryl headed our direction. So let's listen in.
What we have done, as you probably have seen, we have issued a voluntary evacuation of the west end of Galveston Island. That went into effect at 10 a.m. this morning. The reason for that is, number one, the west end is an area that's a very low-lying area that is not protected by our seawall, and therefore storm surges and things like that affect them directly very quickly. The other reason is this is the July 4th weekend winding down. We've had a lot of visitors on the island, and we wanted to make sure those that were staying on the west end, visiting friends or with short-term rentals, that they were aware of the issues that happened on the west end, and therefore we wanted to alert them to give them time to get off the island before maybe the storm surge came in. We're getting updates, as I mentioned, very, very quickly, every 3 to 4 hours. We're starting to see now we're probably going to experience tropical force winds here in Galveston. We're going to see a storm surge, possibly up to 5 feet. And if this particular storm moves a little more north, we could see 6 to 7 feet of storm surge here on the island. That would cause a lot of flooding, especially on the west end and in our areas like downtown Galveston. That could cause a lot of flooding there also. We also are interested in the amount of rainfall that may come from this storm. It looks like that we could get a lot of rainfall from this. We're on the dirty side of this storm, and therefore, because of that, we may get a lot of rain, could get almost up to 65-mile-per-hour winds or possibly more, and also a storm surge if it came in or 6 to 7 feet. All of those coming together could have quite a effect on our community here in Galveston. We're prepared for it. This is not, as we talk about, our first rodeo with these storms. We're very prepared. Our city staff has been working diligently to get more prepared as the storm nears us here. Our Public Works Department is on standby and will probably be on standby around the clock until we see what this storm actually does as it moves closer to us. Our public safety personnel are on standby, and so we are prepared as much as we possibly can be for this storm as it moves forward. I want to also say I would like to, on behalf of the city of Galveston, send our thoughts and prayers to those communities that may be in the direct path of this storm and to those communities in the Caribbean that have already experienced Beryl's onslaught. So each community is rebuilding in their own way, and we're prepared as we move forward here in Galveston. Saying that, I'm going to open it up to questions that anyone may have.
When you say prepared, what exactly do you mean by that? What kind of emergency crews do we have on deck or staging? Any specifics there?
Well, we put all of our personnel, those public works and those emergency type personnel, we put them on standby. That means they will be here. They may not even leave their shifts and be here around the clock to be available if needed. We also stage our equipment. We also monitor those areas of the island that give us flooding quickly so that we can see how that's happening. And also, let's take downtown, for instance. We also put barricades up downtown to keep the traffic out of downtown because developing a wake in that water as it builds up in the streets causes a lot of flooding in our shops also. We opened our emergency operations center about 24 hours ago, so we're taking calls from community residents here. So from the standpoint of being prepared, we're just done everything we can to make sure that we're ready to handle whatever happens. Any further questions?
If a resident does find themselves in a position where they're stuck in high water or, in a compromised place, what do you suggest they do?
They call the Emergency Operations Center. The emergency number's here at the city. Byron, what is that number? Where should they?
409-765-3710.
Got that number, and that is the number of the Emergency Operations Center. They will coordinate all calls that have to do with emergencies, and we will respond accordingly depending on what the conditions allow. I would say about the port also, I got notice this afternoon. I think the Coast Guard is going to be shutting down traffic in the port of Galveston starting around 4 p.m. this afternoon. So that is something that the port's taking, and that affects not only cargo, but it affects our cruise lines too, and the cruise lines are cooperating and moving around the schedule so that they can stay out of harm's way and honor whatever restraints we put on them here in Galveston.
The dunes were impacted during Alberto. Have they been able to be built up at all ahead of whatever Beryl might bring?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
The sand dunes, from my understanding, were impacted during Alberto. Have they been addressed, or do you think there'll be any issues once Beryl rolls through?
You mean at the port there, or?
No, for the sand dunes, like along the
Oh, yes, ma'am.
the beach and things like that.
Well, it's, each storm we have erosion of this beach. And especially on the west end, it's probably the highest amount of erosion on the island here. And so when we do have problems there, we try to regroup afterwards. We're still cleaning up after Alberto right now on the west end. So if we get another onslaught of a high surge, that's just going to add to that. That's something that we work with the GLO, the General Land Office, and the Army Corps of Engineers to kind of get us back into shape as quickly as we can.
When you talk about port closures, will that immediately impact the ferry also? Does that mean the ferry is absolutely not running?
I haven't heard directly about the ferry. Brian, have you heard about the ferry?
No, I don't have an update on this.
Haven't heard about the ferry on that. I would suspect that they'll be closing that down. Coast Guard is closing down at 4 p.m. on our port. I suspect the ferry, if they are to close, would probably follow that same schedule. Yes, sir.
You mentioned cruise lines. Are there any departures that have been canceled, postponed, or any disembarkations for today?
No, sir. I haven't heard of any cancellations. The executive director of the port contacted me this afternoon, but I do hear that there is one ship that was supposed to come in that because of the constraints the Coast Guard's put on the port, they're going to come in a day late. So I understand they're holding a ship and bringing them in after the storm moves through here.
Would you happen to know which boat that is?
I don't remember which one that was, no, sir.
Would you happen to know if there's any active work being done to remove maybe people who are disabled or elderly from the island, or do they make those decisions themselves typically?
Right now, we have not called, as you know, for a mandatory evacuation, and that's not even contemplated with this storm. So because of that, we do not have shelters opened at this point, but we are working with our nonprofits here on the island, specifically the Salvation Army and others, to make sure that shelters are available. Byron, did you want to say anything about that, on any shelters available or anything like that?
The Salvation Army is going to be open for any of the homeless that need to seek shelter during the storm. They're just right down the street from us, so that's where they can go seek shelter at.
Very good. Yes, sir.
He had one, he has a second.
Okay. Do you anticipate expanding the voluntary evacuation order?
Say that again.
Do you anticipate expanding the voluntary evacuation order?
At this point, we have that in place just for this particular storm moving in here. The way we don't have any plans whatsoever of expanding this. We're hearing that as this storm moves through, it'll be probably reaching here about 1 a.m. this coming morning. and we're hearing it'll move through quickly. And also, the core of this storm seems to be very narrow. So that's a blessing, I think, for all the communities that are around it. So we have no plans whatsoever of expanding any evacuation orders from this point forward. No, sir.
What is the likelihood at this point that the storm starts to bear a little bit east and therefore the island takes more of a hit than it already would?
If it does move further north or east, you're right. It could give us more of a concern with all of the things I mentioned. Byron, did you want to say anything about that? Byron has the latest on that.
So if what our modeling is, National Weather Service and Hurricane Center, it's not indicating that it's going to do that, but if it does, we're prepared. We're ready for it. All the departments have been prepared. So, if it does make a little jog a little bit more to the east, we're in good shape to handle what comes our way.
Real quick, of course, you said the West End evacuation is voluntary. What do you suggest people who don't want to leave do?
If people don't want to leave, then that's their prerogative and their decision on that. I was talking to our emergency management director just a minute ago. It seems to me the number of people are leaving the island. We're getting reports of a lot of people leaving. So I think a lot of people are heeding that call, especially that live on the West End. Also, when we gave that evacuation order, the West End of Galveston is one of our largest concentration of short-term rentals for individuals coming down and visiting for the holidays. We notified all the short-term rental organizations and the rental companies to make sure that the tenants that are in these homes are aware of what's coming and aware of our evacuation order. We haven't heard of any concerns of people not heeding that, but I'm sure a number of them probably have elected to stay and will leave later today, probably.
Take one last question.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.